Welcome to Quick Take, where we talk about the questions that are on the minds of executives everywhere. How are you, James?
Very good. How about yourself?
Were you going to add to that?
I was expecting more on the everywhere. I thought we'd talk about where everywhere was. So
Yeah.
you kind of
Okay.
you
Let's
caught me
stretch that a
off guard
little.
there.
It's everywhere in the
Well,
world,
everywhere's
in the office.
global. Yeah, up and
Yeah.
down, left and right. Absolutely.
However you want to define that. Like everybody can define it for themselves. We give you permission.
Yeah.
So there you
Feel
go.
free. Feel free. There
Yeah,
we
yeah,
go.
yeah.
Yeah. So what is on the topic? What's on the mind
Well,
of the executives you've been talking to this week?
yes. And I read an article about
hmm
how to manage through really challenging situations.
Oh,
And
sure.
they looked at CEOs and they asked them how much of their day is planned versus reactionary to events or things that come up.
Oh,
And
sure.
most of them had this assumption that most of their time they knew that they would get hijacked from time to time, but most of their time was something that was in their control, that was in their schedule. But when they looked at and analyzed their
The
calendars,
reality. Yeah.
the reality, they recognized that really 80% of their day is reacting to things that are happening
Oh,
around
yeah.
them.
Yeah. I
And
believe
how
that. I believe
interesting.
that.
And they also think that companies have this myth or this assumption that it's mostly planned. So a lot of their workflows and things that they do are around that assumption that things can be controlled. And when you
Sure.
look at it
Sure.
differently, you got to react differently. So how'd that land for you?
Yeah. No, that's super interesting, and I think that one of the challenges that many of us have is, how do we act and how do we deal with that stressful behavior? Good executives know and have tricks that allow them to perform under duress. I mean, that's half of the job, right? Is to
Yeah.
be effective when things aren't going well. And I think in a lot of ways, it has to do with the responses you have to those to the what we're talking about 80%, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
that 20% is structured, and we like structure. A lot of executives are control freaks, but boy, the trick is really how do you preemptively behave so that when things go wrong, that you can be prepared.
Yeah. And I think you do get better at it over time. Like I can
Oh, you
look
totally
back
do.
on my former self and I can remember some of the feedback that I got about just being reactionary in a negative way,
Mhm.
but I didn't have the finesse yet. Hadn't had enough, on the job experiences to be
Yep,
able to
yep.
handle that. I wonder how that happens. Like when is it one day that you're bad and then like is it morph over time and how do we do
You
that?
know, I'm gonna it's a great segue into my first recommendation on that, and that was such a good segue. It's gonna sound like it
Thank
was
you.
planned, but it was not. But I think the what you do as you get more seasoned as a leader is you rely more on and you realize the importance of relationships. And
Yeah.
so I think the number one thing you can do to prepare yourself for difficult times, whether it's a political nightmare, whether it's a technical outage or an external activity, is when you have strong relationships within your organization, you do not feel as alone as a leader and you have more confidence that you and your team can be successful. And so I think as you get more seasoned, you realize that those relationships are more important. You don't necessarily go into things alone. And so you do feel like you're better at it, but it's also because you've done the preemptive work. You've done the first thing, which I recommend, is really focus on the relationships because that's what's going to get you and carry you through the challenging times.
So are you saying in those moments, reach out to a person that you trust? Or are you saying that you're getting feedback and a context to what you're good at and how you react and you get the feedback so that you can become kind of that better seasoned
No, I'm
self?
saying that just the very nature of you building a strong relationship with your peers, your team,
Yeah.
your stakeholders allows you to be more effective in times of challenge. Look,
Okay.
if let's say that you have to interface with a third party organization, maybe it's a different division, maybe it's a different company, and there's somebody who's very political, very difficult to work with. The relationships you have with your peers, the relationships you have with other people at that in that stakeholder community are going to make that situation that much easier. So
Yeah.
it's really about being good at building those relationships. Um, it's funny. I was watching, this silly little video on the interweb the other day about The Godfather, and it was like the 10 lessons every executive should learn from The Godfather. I think one of them was some of them were clearly ridiculous, but one of them that I thought was kind of funny was talked about how The Godfather was about relationships and that his power base was a lot about giving. So when he needed things, the people he had given to were felt beholden to him. And I think in this situation it sort of applies in that sense that community that you build, the
Yeah.
relationships you build, will serve you when times are difficult. And
Yeah.
so, whatever the challenge is, I think ultimately, and it's not having friends. I'm not saying you need to have buddies on every level, but you need to have strong relationships and understand that ecosystem is super powerful when it comes to difficult times.
I love that we're learning from The Godfather. And it's
This is a good movie.
yeah, it is a good movie. Investing in those relationships. I
Hmm.
always say, just as a tangent comment, is when I talk to somebody, I always ask them what I can do for them. And even
Absolutely.
if they can't come up with something, it's they appreciate the sentiment
Sure.
of it. And sometimes they actually say, actually, there is something you can
There is
do.
something.
So I really
Right.
believe in the investment before you need to take out the,
Totally agree. Totally
not
agree.
that that's your intention, but have abundance, have abundance,
Totally agree.
abundance
Totally
mindset.
agree. Totally agree.
All right, what's number
And then
two?
the other thing that I think is super important is really is trying to stay neutral, right? When things are really
Yeah,
difficult, that leaders need to have that objectivity. And
yeah,
it's so easy as a leader to get caught up in the situation or drive in a certain way. I know that I am better when I am less in the mix of things. When I am less emotionally involved,
yeah.
I am and more clear. And so oftentimes it's important for us as leaders to take stock in the situation, take a step back, get some perspective, and be aware of what's going on. Because ultimately, it's that that in the moment, if 80% of my day is reacting, is reactionary, and 80% of my day I need to think on my feet, then it's important that I'm able to do that with some clarity. I can't let the previous nightmare affect this nightmare and affects the next one. I've got to be able to context shift. I've got to be able to objective, and I've got to be able to look at each one independently, because
Oh,
we all know, it's easy to sandbag and take the frustration out from the previous meeting on the next meeting. But good executives will know to stay neutral and keep that objectivity.
yeah, and so, when I think about that, I love that so much because emotion clouds our ability
Mm,
to
it
really
does.
think through. So, if you can
Hmm.
zoom out,
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
maybe 2 techniques might be, are you getting triggered by somebody in the situation? Like, "Why did you do
Sure.
that?" You know what? Like,
Right.
and,
Right.
letting that go and giving yourself permission to deal with that later, and then
Yep.
really looking at what do we do to solve? How do
Well, I
we
think that's
move
the third
forward?
item. Exactly
Oh,
right. Focus on the
it's a great
solutions, though. But I
transition.
know, but that's a great transition. The queen of transitions today. My goodness, I don't even know how. That just we are simpatico. It's right here. But I think that's
Great.
also right. You want to stay neutral and stay
Yeah.
focused on the solutions. I'm a technology person. I'm an engineer. I work with engineers, and I joke all the time that our first solution, or our first step in the meeting is to solve the problem, right? We always want to solve it. We want to solve it, but we should take a step back, look at what the problem is, and then we do want to solve it. But let's not over engineer and think about how we got here. There's a lot of energy on that, especially as a leader. You want to address how we got there. Let's be solution oriented, and then come back to it later. So I think those last two go really well together, right? Stay neutral, stay solution oriented, and things will be a little more clear.
Yeah, and another technique to do that is stay away from questions around why did it happen,
Why? Right,
and
right.
go to what are we gonna do? And just even
Yeah.
changing that because when you think about why, you're kind of looking back, and in those
Hmm.
moments, you need to really be pushing, like you said, toward the future.
Right. And I think one of my favorite techniques on solutioning is really to have a special place for the why. And, in software development, we call it we do a retrospective and we go back and look at it. And so when you say, hey, you're getting into the why, let's put that in the retrospective, let's focus that, let's parking lot that, if you
Mhm.
will, for another
Yes.
time, then it allows people the opportunity to say, all right, I get to dig into that later. Right now, we're going to look at the solution. So that's really part of
Yeah.
like, focus on the solution and only the solution, not the why, not the how. Let's right now talk about the solution. And I think that that helps you in your in that second point, which is trying to stay neutral and staying dispassionate.
Yeah, I love that there's a special place for why. That is
Oh,
so
that's good.
great.
No, I
Yeah.
think there's
Oh, no,
a
I'm
time and
taking their
place.
words.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
Uh,
it's good.
and then
It's
that
another
gives
one.
people the permission to come back to it
Mhm.
in the future, which then it takes away the anxiety of
Oh,
the
absolutely.
emotions of other people going, but James, I want to talk about what
Sure.
happened. And you're
Well, I
saying,
think that's the
here you
beauty
go.
of that agile methodology and that the
Yeah.
retrospective purpose, which is it is confined to that, right? It is supposed to be a safe place. It is a time for us to have that discussion. And by putting it into that box, you're not panicking to fix the problem as well as fix why, because those things get, as we all know, conflated, and ultimately that's when passions, can
Yeah.
flare. So,
I like
so
this
yeah,
so much. So let's go through the three
yeah.
areas.
So the first thing you can do to prep yourself to deal with that 80%, that ongoing onslaught of change is, make sure you build strong relationships. I think that's
Yeah.
probably the foundation of 80% of our episodes, but those relationships bear fruit
Yeah.
so much in times of trial. And those relationships, remember, they're certainly not just your direct reports, they're your peers. It's that whole stakeholder community. So build strong relationships. Secondarily, stay neutral, stay focused. You got to be, as a leader, you've got to make sure that you are staying in the middle there and trying and not taking sides. You need to stay neutral. And then third, of course, stay solution oriented. I like it. There's a special time for why, and usually in the moment,
Special
that is
place.
not it. Special place for why, and stay solution oriented, and you'll be more successful when those things are tough.
Awesome. This was good. We were really yin and yang today.
Yeah, today
This
was
was
a
a
good
good one.
day. Yeah,
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 we
yeah,
don't
yeah.
always have good days.
No, but
80%. I love
some
how we
days
keep throwing
eight.
out 80%. 80% of the time we're not.
We're good. Yeah, but we don't put those on air. That's why.
That's true.
That's
That's our
right.
own
We are
expense.
in control.
Well,
Let's
this
not
was a
focus
good
on the
one.
why.
So what do we need to do to move forward? I need to say we appreciate everyone joining us. We've been hearing great feedback from our the people that are our listeners, and so we appreciate that. So if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with somebody and give them that gift of our wisdom. We like how I did that.
Brilliant. You're brilliant
80% of the
again.
things we say, 80% will be
I'll take
worthwhile.
that.
So
I'll totally take that.
and make sure that you engage with us. We would love to hear from you. We love to hear your stories, and we really appreciate when people give us questions that challenge us to
Absolutely.
really think about this. So, thanks for joining us, James. Thank you as always. This has been great
All right. All right.
and
Until
appreciate the
next time.
wisdom. Until next time.